Welcome to the Life Rocks podcast. In this podcast, we explore how nature, science, education, and culture can benefit all children and future generations. This is a show for educators, parents, mentors, and anyone interested in making the lives of our children, families, and communities better. So sit back, take a breath, and enjoy the show. And now for your host, Asher Cloran.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Life Rocks podcast. The Life Rocks podcast is a place where we get to invite inspirational teachers, scientists, activists, anyone in the space of childhood development, nature connection, and all the good things that are involved in raising healthy families and raising healthy children that are connected to the earth and inspired to live amazing and awesome lives. And today we have the amazing Nicolette Sowder, who is the founder of Wilder Child, who has become one of the largest homeschooling communities and largest global communities of nature-connected parents, home educators, and nature-based educators. Nicolette has a master's in writing and formerly taught in a traditional classroom, so she knows what the traditional system is like. She is an ambassador for the Teach for America program, and her experience within the paradigm of the traditional system strengthened her resolve to help design nature-rich, whole child learning experiences. And now she's doing that as a Cedar Song certified educator at Strong Roots Nature School near Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yes. And together with her husband, also runs a 60-acre farm based on restorative agriculture principles where she wild schools her two daughters. How awesome is that? We're so stoked to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm so honored. I feel a connection with you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great. We've been vicariously following along with Nicolette's journey at Life Rocks for a while. And, you know, when we started into the social space with Life Rocks, we went on Instagram and, you know, looked around who are all the accounts in the space. And yeah, Nicolette is definitely leading the charge here in a few departments, which is awesome. And, you know, I know this journey for you has come from yourself. It's come from your family. It's come from your own experience and wisdom. So how did you come to running one of the world's largest homeschooling groups?
Well, the short story is that this has all happened because of a couple of pigs. Honestly, I have gratitude. We have a picture of those pigs up, and I have gratitude for those pigs daily.
Wow.
My husband and I had dove deep into the permaculture space, which is like regenerative agriculture. And actually a huge movement in Australia with that, but with Bill Mollison. So that's where we really got excited about. So that's a cool connection. And then we brought in these pigs, and my parents have 3 acres, and we had this electric fence, and the plan was to move the fence, right? Just so, and then that would just make it all okay, that they would not destroy the land. That is not what happened. They destroyed my parents' yard. I can't even imagine what my parents were thinking. I was pregnant. We just moved in with them, you know, saying that we were going to have this communal situation without really doing a lot of the groundwork that, you know, community truly requires. And so it was through these pigs that we decided, you know, we needed more land. The prices down near Chicago were astronomical. So we started looking up in Michigan because I had emotional roots up here. Once a year, we would go on a vacation, just drive 5 hours up. And so many of my formative nature just memories were up here. So we gravitated up here and started our farm up here. And then once getting here, everything just completely started accelerating. And I think that had to do with my pregnancy. Just really, I moved into a different state, like within myself, my relationship with myself. Just a little bit of an awakening there. And then my daughter was 1, and we were dominated by nature in a way that I never had been. And so the
Mm.
predominant philosophy had been human. And then there was
Yeah.
a big shift to it being nature. And to
Right.
have that happen alongside, to be so attuned to my daughter, to have those two things come together in that way, I felt like, I don't know if you've ever had times in your life where you just feel like your senses are just so much more heightened.
Mm.
I feel like I was just so open, and I really
Mm.
started to feel like in communication with nature.
Wow. So it was this turning point into the wild and sort of some riddles almost of um, homesteading and interacting with nature, and this all led you onto the wild path with the pigs leading the
Yeah, the
charge.
pig's like leading the way.
They are very
It's so
curious and
funny.
entertaining creatures, aren't they?
Oh, they are. They're so magical. Like they're so sensitive. I'm not surprised it was them that, got us up here essentially. And
Mm.
yes, I just started really building that relationship with myself, and then it was just mirrored in the landscape, which is something that comes up a lot in my philosophy with nature is really just this mirroring, like it's this cyclical experience, which I can talk about a little bit about later, but my inner landscape being connected to the external landscape, I felt like there's just something clicking into place there. And as I
Mm.
was experiencing that, I wanted to share it and with no thoughts of, I mean, this was back where it was more of the beginning of the
Yep.
nature-based parenting movement. I mean, this is an indigenous ancestral, I just want to say that, like, I did not create this, right? We're building on wisdom that has come before. But in
Mm.
terms of the modern aspects of it and it being shared on the internet, I was at that point where it started to be like just come up into the zeitgeist. And so I think there are a lot of people who started to connect with it. So Wilder Child was created out of this feeling of me starting to really co-parent with Mother Nature.
Mm.
That's the way that it felt for me.
Wow, that's really, really beautiful. It is an ancient way of being.
It is.
And I think something that happens pretty spontaneously when people spend time on the land. So it's like not something that we're necessarily taught, but if there is that openness, like it sounds like you had a moment where it was just like dropped the preconceptions and then suddenly this like way flows to you. It reminds me of like the indigenous here, First Nations would call it the dreaming, where life is like this dream-like experience where there's no separation between the natural world around you and the inner world that's happening within you, and things become signs and portents. And is that
Yeah.
kind of what you felt was starting to happen to you and that you needed to share it?
Yes, that feeling first, it was in my daughter. I saw her experiencing like what you described. I saw her living it,
Mm, mm,
being as many children are
mm.
in it. They're in that. They're connected to that space, that way of being. And so because I was so attuned with her, she was really like I was watching it happen.
Yeah.
And then a sense of remembrance started to kick in within me
Mm,
of she really taught me through her exploration of her these are her roots more so than me. I was coming in here after a long, I didn't grow up here, but this is her home. These are her roots. So
gotcha.
that's going to be very potent. So I was
Mm,
experiencing the level of her relationship and connection and learning, relearning how to enter back into that. And because of my
yep.
frame of reference as a mother, I experienced it. The one of the ways was that my daughter was being mothered by
Mm,
everything around her. And it was almost like as my awareness expanded, And the more I stepped into the relationship, the more that I was seeing like everything was mothering my daughter. If she was
Mm.
struggling over the log, I'm like, that's helping her with strength.
Yeah.
If she was drinking from the spile, like sap out of the maple tree, she was being nourished by maple. And it's a
Mm.
very different way of entering into the wild because we're really taught to consume it.
Yes.
The
And
nature-based
to,
education movement is, I mean, the environmental education. That's how I grew up, right? Learning that
yeah,
environmental ed.
yeah. There's a motto in Australia. They say, leave nothing but your footprints. That's the environmental slogan
Yeah.
of like visit nature like you're like a spaceman and then leave nothing but your footprints. And don't forget to slip, slop, slap, protect yourself against the sun and the insects and everything.
Yeah, right. It's
So it's
like
sort of
I took this quote
consume
down
and quarantine.
there. Yeah, exactly. The consumptive aspect. And then you see like there's then the adventure piece, right? You're gonna go and ski, you're gonna go and hike, but you're going to this place and you're consuming it,
Mm,
and then you're gonna go and post about it. I have no judgment because I've partaken in all aspects of the relationship because I've grown in the relationship, right? Like, so I don't
sure.
have a judgment, but I do see my perspective now looking back, that there was no interaction with the mountain when I skied on it. I used
Mm,
it and then I left. But I wrote down this quote from Gary Snyder that's one of my favorites. Nature is not a place to visit, it is home.
nature is not a place
And
to
Wilder
visit, it is home.
Child,
Mm,
nature is not a place to visit, it is home.
mm.
And really, like wild schooling or Wilder Child is a homecoming for
Yes.
parents and caretakers. And it's
Mm,
an endless process. Like
yeah.
I learn more every day how to better care, be a like one of the caretakers as a tree. It takes a long time to learn how to be a tree.
Totally. We can learn a lot from those big, tall, strong
Yeah,
beings.
yeah.
So your first daughter awakened this wisdom within you through observing her connection to the world. This then sparked the flame for Wilder Child. When you were in those early stages of this like dawning awareness, dawning way, did you find support out there? Did you find resistance out there? How was it in communicating to your husband about this? What was the journey for you to step into this role, to take it up, and to also find the support that you needed to step into this? Because I think that a lot of mothers especially notice this awareness, it comes up, but then it's not always able to go into the right places. Maybe the other partner's not in support or the culture. So how did you get to be so strong in this department?
I mean, I'm lucky in that my husband's always trusted my feminine wiles. He's always there's something he trusts my intuition.
Mm,
He can talk about, doesn't blindly trust me, but I feel like there's always communication going on between us, and we both, our love of the soil was what drew us together,
mm,
that and our weirdness. So we had a nice Venn diagram in the middle that sustained us through the ups and downs.
great.
I had created a Forest Friday in order to just like connect with people. I didn't know anybody when I moved here. And it was just so simple. Just Forest Friday, just come and be together, try to be together on the same place. That's kind of cuts down on the consumptive piece because you're getting to know the same piece of land.
Yes.
Um, yeah, through the relationships that you're building together. So you're really culture building on the land there. And that was key because there was just a lot of just affirmation then put back, like, oh, this is needed. other people are seeing it this way. Other parents are, I was learning from them, like what their experiences were and how they were seeing it. So, and then my dear friend Kristen Stoddard created Strong Roots, which is a nature, it's a forest school. And so then I started teaching there, and that has just grown in terms of like, it's such a reflection of our growth and our relationship with nature. So there's been so much support along the way. And the great teachers that I've learned from just through people who I've just on the internet, right? I've had great teachers. John Young has been an inspiration for me in so many ways, and all the Indigenous teachers. So I just feel like there's just every time I sort of get stuck, there's another step on the journey. There's some inspiration that I'm led to. There's affirmation on the landscape through just feeling like now I can communicate with nature much more than I used to. So I have, and however anybody wants to experience that, it's like, oh, is she saying she gets messages? Does she talk to the trees? This is a spectrum. You can enter into this relationship in any way that you want. It's just like a regular relationship. Some people are going to be really deep together. Some people are just going to like hang out together, and that's great. There's no wrong way. But receiving nature is a mirror. So it's perceiving it on that level is available to like every single person. It is a mirror. And every relationship in our life is a mirror to us. So it's the same when you go out there. If you're mad, you trip over a root and you're mad. That's like a mirror to what's going on like within.
Yeah.
So the support, I think, to speak a little bit more directly to your question, the way that I felt I could keep going is because I felt that I've kept growing. I see real progress within my own personal life, my own struggles, my own relationships. And so to me, that's the way it's been supported, like that journey has been supported.
All the little steps gave you the encouragement you needed to take the next steps. And I'm interested to hear about your childhood and your connection to nature as a child. And was it a homecoming? Was it something that you returned to that you had when you were a child that maybe you took a departure from in the teenage years? What's your journey with nature, and how early does it begin for you?
I remember when I was 5, like telling my mom I wish the flowers had heads so I could talk to them. And I named the trees, and I was out all the time. And my parents were very busy. My dad was he's a renovator, and he was very busy. But in those small moments of like connected family time, they were always like calling me to the window to see the birds. So there's always a very natural, instinctual, where I think parents of like my generation are a little bit more like they're hyper aware. Like I am calling them to the window. They're either not, there's like there's unconsciousness, and then there's hyper awareness of like I am calling them to the window.
Yeah.
And then they may later call their children to the window. It's for like a hyper like sensitivity.
That's brilliant. That's really good.
So then like the parents of the 60s and 70s, like they do have that rawness, that authenticity. And my parents had that. Like I really like, they love the birds, and they love just like taking walks. They're not like watching themselves take the walk. They're taking the walk.
They're not thinking about the benefits of nature bathing.
They're not going to blog about it later. They're just like, I'm just going to take the walk. The raw, authentic thing, I got that along with my parents are pretty radical in terms of like they're very open-minded in terms of like what's possible. So my
Yeah.
imagination was very stretched and I was open to open in a way that I've built on what they taught me.
Wow.
And I don't think that every like that's the hope,
Hmm.
right? Like the hope is that the soil underneath the garden will keep and being enriched.
Developing.
We don't have to do it perfectly. I'm gonna
Yeah.
screw it up. I
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
have
Mm. Mm.
whatever, like, you know, but the idea is to stay open, and they definitely have taught me that. I think people can come into nature connection at any point. I do not think your childhood dictates, even though you think it was based on the memes, that you have to have this, openness. I think the openness comes when you're ready to receive it. I do not think you have to have the perfect childhood in order to have a deep connection with nature later.
No, absolutely not. And there's no such thing, is there, as the perfect childhood,
Mhm.
as long as the lessons of life become something that enriches the person and carries them forwards. That is the perfect childhood, isn't it?
Right. And sometimes it is I know that sounds like coming from a privileged place, but I think it comes from a place of giving people the hope for if they didn't have the perfect thing, or they sometimes think they have to know the taxonomy or the Latin names of every herb before you eat them. And so I'm just like focusing on the relationship and what's opening before you, like what are you drawn to? While other child is and the nature co-parenting with nature is all about your journey. So
Mm.
you might look at the curriculum and look at chapter 8 and say, oh, it's time to study dandelions. No, it's not. What do you feel? Like,
Yeah.
what is outside your door? What's calling to you? What's present? You know?
There's a big divergence when it comes to, what the curriculum and the schooling system is trying to achieve for children, prepare them for the workforce, prepare them to, be well suited in a nice job and that kind of thing. But it's not allowing for that intuitive, soulful expression that nature pulls out of us, pulls those interests out of us through connecting, through spending time in the wild, or having that wild mind that is open. And I know you touched on privilege there, and it is a real point that access to nature for children in urbanized situations is very limited. Um, and then also, you know, contexts where childhood is really rough and it's not fun and it's not nice. And, we could say, oh, that, shapes them later on and could be grist for the mill, but not necessarily the case. And then also that if your parents aren't open, they are nature phobic,
Mm-hmm.
they hate trees because they're dangerous, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't like bugs because they are dangerous, and feathers give off diseases. This kind of mindset really does put the dampener on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
um so I'm sure you've come across those more closed mindsets in your work, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
parents who have a bit more of that approach, but they usually shed that through exposure to other people doing it around them, and it's not necessarily their fault so much as just the perspective and the different experiences they've had that have led them into that situation. So out of all that, I would like to say that
Yeah,
probably the openness of your parents and the openness of my parents even led us to be more on the front foot with nature.
absolutely. I think I've been really blessed and privileged in my experience. And that's why one of the great gifts, one of the riches of our society are our elders. A conscious elder, a guiding elder, is in very rare supply, because children, it's not just that children need access to nature. They do. Just the straight health benefits are huge in terms of that's a huge, that's big importance. But children have their own intuitive, like they will learn intuitively out there on their own. And there's a big movement around that, like play-based and child-led. That's it, the child-led expression. And totally. I think, though, really, that's not how we learned. That's not how humans actually interacted in nature. The way that we were in nature was in village. And I'm not saying to go back, but it's this sense of, it's not just about getting out there. It's about looking at the cultural elements that were in place when we were connected, like in terms of a mycelial way. Like we are a part of the system. What elements were present such that we could be in interconnected relationship with the wild? And those have been lived. They've been shared. And our traditional school system does not integrate those. For example, in a forest, I use a forest as my example, but really every biome has these elements. Varying stages of growth exist in a forest. But the classrooms don't contain mixed stages.
Right.
So already we're starting to, our design principles, we're already leaving, like we're leaving the forest. Mother trees, right? There's that element of care.
Yep.
A less competitive environment. You're sharing nutrients as opposed to hoarding. Right. So then that's another principle that's the facts. If you're studying the system and we are nature, that's a fact. So a huge one is cycles of growth. Not A, B, C, D, not semesters. I mean, cycles of growth where you feel something is coming up within you and it is something that you must move through. Right. And it is a regenerative cycle. So that is what Wilder Child is built on, is like one of the frameworks to help with the homecoming, as a way of describing it, is it is a framework to help with the homecoming, as opposed to just being like, kids will get it if they're just exposed enough. But that's not how we got it.
That's right.
We got it together.
That's so right. And I love your Kids Moon Club. I think is such a fantastic idea, where not only is it the awareness of the moon cycle, it's connected to wisdom that is contained within each of those moons. So the journey throughout a year takes the child through story, craft, community aspects, and learning about the self, learning about the cycles of nature. What better way to learn about nature than studying this beautiful moon that is, the real calendar, the real timekeepers of this universe aren't the numbers that we've abstracted. They're not the A, B, C, D, seasons. It's this flowing continuum that is connected to our inner psyche. And this, lunar way is the way of connecting to that deeply.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Life Rocks is not just a podcast. It is an education foundation centered around connecting children to the magic of nature through earth sciences. As a self-funded foundation and startup, we are constantly seeking support so that we can continue our great work. So if you feel called to donate to Life Rocks, please head down to the show notes and find the relevant donation link. We accept regular money as well as cryptocurrencies. We greatly appreciate you, our Life Rocks community. Now, back to the show.
So tell us a bit
Yeah,
more
I
about
like
the Kids Moon Club, and what was its inception, and how's it been going? How's it been impacting children?
Oh my gosh, that just came out of the wild blue also. It was like we were just tuning to the moon. And it again, I'll just like keep going back to this idea of the homecoming and a framework for walking. The moon was one of the pieces that it was like if we're not going to click back into cycles, if we didn't understand phases, we weren't like that seemed to be one of the fundamental pieces of rejoining
Mm,
this wilder way, right? So the moon is the number one easiest, most obvious, most contextual, most ancestral way to learn that. And
mm,
I liked it because for all of the emotive aspects of it, but I liked it because it's no matter where you are on the spectrum, you can believe. Like it's
right.
like, yeah, like there's the moon, right? It's
Yeah.
moving, it's changing. Every,
Hmm.
you can't deny it. So, and I came at it from where I was learning about the moon names or the tradition of naming the full moon every month
Yes.
containing a name that's reflective of that full moon. And I just kept thinking of how non-contextual those colloquial names were. Because
Mm,
the wolf moon, like we don't have wolves. And
right.
then that led me onto a whole path of interrelational learning, like
Mm,
really learning from where you're at. Like,
mm,
and I can't really explain to you the sense of freedom that broke open within my heart. Like I
mm.
had an experience of like opening up into sovereignty after being in traditional school for so long and thinking, no, I have to call it the wolf moon, right?
Right.
And then once I got that strong no, it's like, whoa, everything just started to fall. Like I can just learn contextually. I will, which it seems so crazy that that is radical. Because like
Mm,
the fact that it's radical to learn contextually just shows you how far upside down we are. Because that's all we
yes.
used to learn was in the moment. We're learning is life. So the fact that I had gotten so far away from that just showed how much I was like controlled through
Mm,
having to learn a certain way, it not being real learning unless it was like in a specific order dictated by a book, by a curriculum. Not checking in with my own self. And so the Kids Moon Club was my desire to have people not only enter into that cycle, but to find freedom within, like to start building their own relationship with nature that was special and specific to them. And I was excited. It's been amazing. Like I have seen culture built all over the world through, so we start with the colloquial names and then every month I guide them in a process of finding their own. Because, there are hundreds of moon
mm.
names from cultures all over the world.
I bet.
Indigenous cultures, but also European culture, like it's African cultures, they're everywhere. So, anyways, that was very creative and it's been very connecting and it's grown. It's grown a lot.
It is super cool. And we're going to pop all the links to that down below. And we highly recommend that any children and families jump into that Moon Club, because it's such a simple and beautiful way for experiencing nature and, yeah, creating your own context. Like
Mhm.
all of the stories, all of the wisdom, all of the ancient way of connecting to nature was personal, and it was
Person.
contextual, and it was cultural, and we've captured a lot of that data and we've put it in awesome books and things, and you know we get all the names and the common names and stuff. But yeah, children are on a different level. They're already in that method. So let's support it a little bit more. Let's create culture again. I think this is, yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Like let's be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit slower when we're looking for a craft. Just like the temptation to Google dandelion craft is so strong, but I think it's about just like taking that moment and just attuning to your place, your people, yourself, just giving yourself a moment. It doesn't matter if you do the craft. It just matters that you understand that there's a relationship being built that's there, that's really important, that comes first.
So when I think of nature connection, something that has changed for me over the years, and it's speaking a little bit to what you're talking about now, is that coming from like the lens of, you know, wanting to know species or plant names or identify things, to like a deeper form of listening. And when we're sort of labeling things, it reminds me of that consuming, like we're going out there and we're tagging everything. We're like, yep, put a tag on it. And we're sort of, we're sending our eyes out to grab stuff. We're sending our ears out to grab the, oh yeah, that's that bird noise, or that's that tree. But then there's this state of reverence and deep listening, and our whole body, our whole organism is like an antenna for nature. And we notice it when we're in that state of deep listening, like a bird call. We feel it in our body. We feel the wind on us. So I think we're actually, our whole setup is designed for deep listening, deep observation, which is almost like more of an emptying and an allowing nature to come into us and react with us.
Yes, that's like exactly it. And it's an uncomfortable process at first because there's no instant gratification. Because when you're going out and you're labeling something, you're referencing another human who first labeled it. So it's a little bit of an echo chamber. So you get that instant, you can look it up and get that instant gratification. It goes out the mind. It doesn't actually interact with the thing. It interacts with the human idea of the thing.
Yes.
And then it comes back in. But I just want to take one before I go to that other piece of it. Like that's okay.
Yeah, please.
We need that. And
Yes.
this is to say, because some people are like, you're just talking about the soft skills, the emotional piece. Like we need to know. It's good to know. It's good to, but it's like it can't stop there. Because
They're
what
modes.
happens, it
Modes
just
of
has to
operation.
come. Yeah, it goes boom, boom, and it's still in the ego. But the ego is a different experience, and it's unique to each person. For me, I call it, because I'm like obsessed with what it is. This is my hyper focus. What is it? Like, what's happening there? I call it stitching, because it's like it goes out and then it hits the thing and it comes back in and it creates a stitch. It's like that's the regenerative cycle. Like that's what it is. Really and cool. When it comes back out, you know, when you see yourself in it and you're open to the message and it comes back out, it comes back creatively. It comes back out like it nourishes the soil. Just like a plant will break down and decompose. It's like our way of human compost is through our creative like expression.
Yes.
We give back. So traditional schooling in my experience cuts off half of the cycle.
Right.
It actually stops it before it can grow, and it cuts out the co-creative piece. So it's very hard to create something different when you're only operating from that half. And as I've
Yeah.
come into this other piece of it, I've never been more creative. And it doesn't feel like that desperate creativity that kind of was in my youth, where I'm like being repressed. So I'm acting out against that and just like, I'm going to do every stand-up poem. And it's like, there's no wisdom, there's no roots, which was it was a great experience. It was pretty wild. But this is nice because I feel like my creativity is feeding something. My creativity has really deep roots, now more so.
Mm, really cool. It's connected to deeper underpinnings.
Yep.
So you've cultivated this philosophy with Wilder Child through your family, through your experiences teaching in, more nature connected schools, through working
Mm.
with the soils. What is the message today that you would like to share with parents out there, parents and teachers, that may be more in the mainstream? They're looking to
Mm-hmm.
have a more nature connected home and education. What's your message to them, Nicolette?
Yeah, in the most simplest way, I would say don't be afraid.
Mm,
Don't be afraid to go deeper. Don't be afraid to reintegrate um, those parts of yourself, right? In terms of if you're looking at a cicada and you're only talking about the science of the cicada, and there's no connection to the fact that it completely changed its skin. Like it completely changed. Then I would wonder what about that idea is hard for you to talk about.
mm,
So um I think it's about like just like understanding that the labels of teacher, the labels of parent, like really, we're just creatures on a journey. And our children need to have permission to know that that's the most important thing. And so to leave out all those pieces, the deeper pieces, the emotive pieces, the pieces that are a little bit more, yeah, just like the metaphor, right? You could call it metaphor. I think the invitation there is to ask yourself why. And I'm going to just push it back to, I'm going to speak from my own experience. I can look at certain relationships in my life and see why I can't go deep in those relationships. I can't make that, I can't, there's something within myself. Those relationships are a mirror, right? So, um, if if we want our children to love nature, to protect nature, to be a part of something bigger than themselves, we've got to be able to do that within ourselves. And
mm,
it's a personal, emotional, life-giving, co-creative journey. It's not learning acquisition. So just like examining, it sounds very complicated, but just like examining your relationship with nature. Like, I start small, one leaf. What is my relationship with this leaf? It's like the most powerful question you could ask. What's
mm,
my relationship with this strawberry? What's my relationship? Um, so I think that is going to open up a whole and just spending time, like to your point, slowing down, being like letting in. If you don't want to jump to that, yeah, just like spending time in a more intentional way, like in a more where you're doing awareness practices. Anything that's going to bring you into the present moment while you're in nature is going to open up this path that we've been talking about like within this hour. There's no way that you can like awareness practices and being conscious, being in the now are totally connected to everything that we've been talking about. It's impossible to be in the now and not have a deeper experience. Guaranteed. That's why kids get so excited, because they're in the present moment. Like, they've received a ton. We're like, we're tired. We're gonna go look at the bird, and that's fair. But the reason that they're taking so much in is because they're actually present.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's always inspirational to see children out in nature doing their thing and just connecting with that wild mind that they already have. And I think adults all draw a lot of inspiration when we get those opportunities to teach with nature. Man, it's so much easier than being in four walls.
It is if you're open to it. I think for some people it's very, very hard because you have to like let go of some control.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden, if you're seeing the teacher as the tree, you're stepping back a little bit. So there again, that's that trigger, that wounds that might come up on this process of this homecoming.
Yeah.
I've worked through a lot of personal, my own personal things that have come up along this way.
You care to share one?
Yeah. Oh, this was huge. This was like the biggest one is I don't think that I could, despite all my years as a nature-based teacher, despite being Wilder Child Ambassador, Wildschooling creator.
Yep.
It wasn't until recently that I actually discovered, don't tell everybody this, but that I couldn't fully receive nature. If you would believe it.
I believe it. I believe it.
Okay, yeah, you believe it. I believe you believe it. And then I think it was because I didn't feel like on some level worthy of it. Like I didn't feel like I deserved to feel it completely without getting too much into it. But once I opened up my heart and started to really believe that I received it, believe that I deserve to receive it, I've been taking it so much more in. And that's been a beautiful experience. Because I run very fast, as you can probably imagine. Like I'm really like up. I've got like high energy. I'm moving.
Yeah.
So it's been good to slow down and actually metabolize the experience, to really receive something as simple as a breeze. As for me, what really did it was a cattail. Do you guys have cattails there?
Similar, yeah.
Okay. So that's like the fluff.
Yeah.
Well, at the end, there's only a very specific time where this moment could be created, which is, I love that about nature. You cannot get it, limited time only. And
exclusive.
It's cattail time. I'm like, it's cattail time. And I went out and just like with taking the fluff out and just, oh my gosh, an hour just watching it fly over the water. And just really felt like I received the message. I received the beauty. I received the moment. I took it all the way in. And some practices can help with that, like Japanese forest bathing is a practice that I think can facilitate that. And so it's been beautiful to work through that within myself. And now the gifts of nature, I'm able to make way more connections. I'm able to share in a more intuitive, instinctual, like honest way. And it's been beautiful. I mean, I feel like I'm a baby again. Like, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much.
Wow, that's so cool. And
It
isn't
is
it
cool. It's cool to
so
feel like I'm growing,
so true of nature, just the constant gift of more awareness, more beauty, more surrender, deeper truths. And yeah, it's all coming out of that raw time spent with the presence of nature. So thank you for sharing that. I think
thank you for asking about that.
Absolutely. I think for so many people out there, like parents are busy, teachers are busy. You're someone who's running a huge group and, has contribute a lot to teaching and is out there doing the work and all of this stuff. So, you know, you're a busy person. You must find that you have a particular way of connecting that you know that nourishes you. What do you suggest for people who are either maybe they're already out in nature, but they need, like, what's the way of connecting that can take them deeper? Or maybe there's someone who's like always like, oh man, I need more time in nature. I really
Right.
feel nourished by it, but blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, like they don't have the luxury of the time.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I'm gonna go with the moon for 5,000
All right.
because just the simple idea of trying to train yourself where you know what phase it's in.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you're inside and even if it's a new moon where it's not visible, at least it's almost like you have a rope that you're constantly, or like it's around your belt, it's like a hook that you're constantly on. And it helps with your heart of feeling like shame for not being able to be out there. There's just something about knowing like where you're at in the circle, the seasonal astronomical cycle that kind of lets you have an out breath. Like, okay, even if I can't go out there, I'm always there. Right.
Yes.
So I'd say the moon, just try to learn what phase you're in. And I do well for you guys, it's light on the left and the moon will be bright.
No,
Dang. So I'm light on the, you
crazy.
have to find a different rhyming thing. Mine's light on the right and the moon will be bright. So, but just find some way to enter in and so you can hook up, right? It's your easiest hookup. It's like your baseline hookup. And then shame is terrible because it will just block,
Right.
immediately block. There is no amount of time that is like the magic number that then you're suddenly going to be nature connected. It's not about time. That's just not how it works. It's about
No.
being.
Yeah.
It's like consciousness.
Yeah.
And just the moon and then finding, I think a mother tree is so important, even if it's just on your sidewalk. If you live in an apartment, finding one tree that is like your tree that you can start
Mm.
referencing, right? Because
Yes. And
what you're
connect to.
doing is building a landscape in your body.
Yes.
You're mapping your body back to the land. And so you can be
Yes.
inside and do that. Like if my mother tree,
Mm.
if I've mapped it, so that can only happen relationally. You know how there's people in your life that you reference even though they're not there? It's
Yeah.
just like they're there, but they're not there. It's
Yeah.
just like I'll just like reference them. That's how it becomes with nature. So
Mm.
start with the tree. And I think I'm a huge forager. So don't be scared of foraging. Find one thing you can eat, you're sure of, because it just builds like the relationship. It puts it
100%.
in. So I think that's a piece of it too. So the moon, mother tree, and maybe trying a bite or two of something wild. But remember, you're
Awesome.
mapping back, you're stitching back, and you'll find your own opportunities to stitch back. Do you want to watch the sunrise? Maybe it's under the guise of, all the steps that you need to take in your morning routine to make you healthy. That's a whole movement too. You're trying to like maximize your 10 minutes of
Yeah.
sun. That's all you needed. Exactly. So whatever's bringing you out, just make it your own. Just remember, just start stitching and soon you'll be so interwoven. You'll be like a mushroom.
I love all of that. I think if people replay that the last 5 minutes here, that's a little gold mine of lots of different stuff. Get a moon calendar, put it on your toilet wall, you know,
Yeah,
um, get the pot plants going, whatever you need to do. And it's not time. You're so right. It is presence, it's connection, it's those less quantifiable forces that are connecting us there. It's your intent, it's your curiosity, all of those
it is.
things. And
Yes, it's
really
your
cool.
belief that you deserve to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Like that you actually can create like a flower, that you are a flower. I think it's impossible. I think what stops people is they don't believe it. They can't believe they could give sap like a maple. They don't believe they could like multiply like like a potato. They're always like, oh, nature's so amazing. I'm like, you're amazing too. Believe it. Believe it.
Totally.
And the more you experience it out there, the more you see the diversity of ways of expression that are out there,
Well,
you
I think
know?
let's take it back to some of the roots of even where you started on this journey, and that's soil and regenerative agriculture and landscapes. And isn't that stuff absolute proof that humans are a symbiotic force of nature that can enhance the living world, that is a living participant in the beauty of nature, that in fact through living our lives, through kindling that curiosity and that intensity with nature, we can actually restore the world, regenerate landscapes, and be the true keepers of this realm that I believe that humans are meant to be, and demonstrably are when they're practicing these types of things. So I'm a huge believer that, I don't like the comments that like, oh, we're just like bacteria growing on the earth or some parasite. I'm like, maybe some people are, but like I'm trying pretty hard over here to be a symbiote. And I
Yeah.
definitely know you are.
Well,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Well, I mean, it's amazing because like what blows my mind is everything returns back to this to the soil. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter how expressive and how unique. Like it shares its gifts, it shares its energy, it lives its journey and its expression, and then it all goes down. That expression and that knowledge and that wisdom composts in.
Yes.
And I think the more that like nature's showing us the way that we work every day. And the more we're with it, the more we connect to, that's what I mean by like stitching back in. You're just stitching it back into that way of that cyclical way.
Yeah.
The more we connect to it, and I think we connect through emotions and somatics. The more we do
Mm.
that, the more we're like, oh, this is how we grow. This is how we
Mm.
feed. This is how we share. This is how this is how we collectively replenish like the world. It's just we got to actually participate in it. And that's
Mm.
what's hard. It's hard to change, right? Like it's hard to grow from a seed and burst up through the soil and do this wild thing. And then you get really like start going down in and then you're back in the ground. I'm saying as an idea, even go through that emotive journey with one thing that I've held inside of me, it's been hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to see an idea to fruition and watch and let go. And it's hard to live a life. It's hard to live a
Yeah.
life and watch our lives go away. And
Yeah.
we struggle with death. So the
Yeah.
more that we can be in it, the more we can like receive all the gifts that come from and all the connection that come
Mm.
from being in it. Like conversations like this, like we're receiving the gift of us being able to connect over it, over the idea. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It's the life is so rich, and
Hmm.
we can't cut out the wildness, because then, we don't experience those higher feelings, those higher emotions, or maybe not even higher, but it's like a depth. And I think
Hmm.
that a lot of the highs and a lot of the lows can be obscured by living in the modern world, where everything's just kind of rounded off and, you know
Right.
comfy and cushy, and we don't think about those things. We just sort of stay in the middle here and do, and it's like fine, but maybe not so exciting, and maybe not so deep, and maybe not so intense, or maybe not so curious. But it's not fully living, I don't think. So I think
Mhm.
children should be wild. People should be wild. Wilder Child is such a great name for everything. It's kind of like Life Rocks as well, like Wilder Child
Yes,
probably came
I
from like the
love it.
rock and roll era.
I know when you asked
Uh,
me, I was like, yes, because that's an amazing name.
Totally.
At the end of the day, it's just life. It's just us living,
Yes. Yep.
and
And
humans
we
do that in
bring,
a really creative way.
yes, we've got to bring our essence to life and reinvigorate life with our passion, our focus, our all of that stuff. So,
Mm.
Nicolette, I'd love to hear what is happening in your communities. What's on for this year? What are the big projects that are filling your cup, lighting you up, and moving you forwards?
Thank you for asking that. I am so Wildschooling is the homeschooling arm of Wilder Child, and I'm so excited to be building out a course on just like Wildschooling 101. Like, what is
Great.
this? How do I get beyond the philosophical piece? Like the way that it is integrated into the forest as its inspiration, as its true home. This is designed after it, it's actually in it. And then what are the ways in which you can actually facilitate this homecoming? And, specifically being on a different cycle, like starting at winter solstice and we end at winter solstice the following year, things like that. So I'll guide people on the wheel, help them get back on through the lunar cycles and through the astronomical points. So I'm so excited about this course because I think it's going to give people a real tangible way to enter back into this way of being. So that's exciting for me. Just a lot of
Really
the things
cool.
that I've experienced, to just be able to get that out and have people have a way. So that's coming. And I actually have a book coming out, a children's book from
Oh,
Random.
yeah.
This is the first time I've actually said that, but it is
Congratulations.
just, thank you. It is, they've adapted some of my poetry and the book is called Wilder Child. So that's coming out.
Oh, wow.
And
Fantastic.
yeah, I'm hoping to do a kids moon club for the Southern Hemisphere, because right now the people in there have to flip everything. It's not the best experience for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's my plan too. But really personally, to just keep opening up, keep connecting with people like you, and to just keep growing, right?
Yeah.
Authentically growing. So yeah, that's some of my plans. And just to see what comes. My real plan, like in a couple of days, I'm experiencing the total eclipse. That's here. There's a band through the US. So that's going to be exciting because I have some things about transformation that I'm going to like put that on top of the experience with my kids. So that's going to be fun. Our first, I feel like, real eclipse experience. And that's something that's in the cycle that just pops up, that all of a sudden you're like, I'm walking the winter solstice. I've got the first full moon. I've got the second full moon. I've got and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is eclipse. So it's like people might think, oh, nature's just this repetitive cycle, but then you get these amazing events that are just like something awe-inspiring to attune to. In the future, like close future, that's what I'm really excited about.
Beautiful. That's so great. And yeah, anyone who's listening, totally recommend that you check out Nicolette's shop at Wilder Child, where there's loads of great printables that basically invite you into the seasonal awareness, lunar awareness, awareness of some of these different cycles, using seasonal nature tables, which are a great way to activate your home in order with the seasons, and something that we also recommend and share in our resources at Life Rocks is the seasonal table. And that's seen in so many traditions. It was very present in Steiner school. It's in First Nations. Just the landscape provides all of the art that we need sometimes to create an experience. So I think all of the stuff in your shop is really awesome. Join the community on Facebook, Wilder Child, the homeschooling group, and have a look at the Moon Club. And I mean, if you are in Michigan, I'm sure connecting to you guys in the flesh would be such an awesome experience. So
I would love that. And if anybody has questions, just email me directly at nicolette@wilderchild.com. My main thing is that people can reach me. If you have a question, if you want to talk, if you want to connect, I'm very open to that. That's why I'm doing this, is to connect. So please, I can send you that and feel free to put that up. But and gratitude to your entire audience, people who are interested, and people who are trying to open up their internal and external landscapes, and to feel the wild, feel more sovereign, feel more a part of a regenerative culture. The more of us that are there, the more that it will be. So I'm grateful to you for amplifying this message.
well, thank you so much, Nicolette. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on and to share this connection as two people who, believe in childhood, believe in nature, believe in healthy communities. As a final gift and message to our audience, what is it that you wish and cherish and hope for future generations?
That they feel connected to life, the life that they're capable of creating, and the life that they represent. Yeah, if everybody could feel that, things would change very quickly. And everybody's on their own journey with that. But yeah, once you start to feel you're a part of life, you start to feel how different life can be. Because being in a regenerative state of living, it's just everything starts to look different. You start to clear stuff out, you start to grow, you start to create, you start to connect, you start to do all the things that make nature beautiful. You start to do those things and want those things more than the other, right? Like the scales start to tip towards life. So it's a beautiful process to get there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nicolette, for that wisdom. And yeah, I can support that message wholeheartedly.
You are. Thank you so much, Asher. I'm so appreciative.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you to the audience out there for listening to this wonderful podcast. Like and subscribe and do all of the things. Share it around with people who need a bit more nature in their lives and are looking to nourish their friends and family. And for now, everybody, life rocks.
Thank you so much for listening to the Life Rocks podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then leave us a review. We'll be back soon with more inspiring content, and in the meantime, remember, life rocks.